We are back with another show. The 49ers take on the Packers tomorrow. It's tomorrow night, 5:15, but I got to get the show in with my guy Suneil here, breaking down the strengths, weaknesses, and the concerns for the 49ers against the Packers. I got my guy, though. We're going to be tuning it up right after this. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the program. Couple of shows this week. Had one on Monday with my guy Wayne, had one with Marco, and now we are capping it off on a Friday with my guy Suneil. How you doing, my man?
Doing good, man. I'm not used to the just the countdown intro. I'm used to, getting pumped up with the 49er videos, Fred Warner, pumping up the team. I was expecting better. Let's start it off with a shot. I was expecting better, Rohan.
I am lazy. I'll say that. I am still, so I'm, as I go on to StreamYard, I have still to put on the video clip into the background. So I have to just upload it, but I have been lazy. That's the unfortunate reality. But Suneil, we are here with a nice show today, talking some 49ers. Let's break it down real quick with the Packers 49ers injury report, because that was kind of the thing that came out yesterday. We now know the final diagnosis for a lot of the players, and I have to say it's pretty positive for the 49ers. If you're looking at the injury report, the only guy that kind of missed practice, it seemed like it was the same diagnosis throughout the week, with Clelin Ferrell being the main guy that kind of missed the week. It seemed like it was anticipated after he got that week 18 injury, he'd probably miss one game. It was going to be a multi-week injury, but he's out with the knee. The only other player on the injury report is Dre Greenlaw with the Achilles. I think it was Achilles tendonitis that he was also out in week 18 for. He was questionable, but he practiced in limited fashion 2 days. And I mean, if you're asking me, there is 0% that Dre Greenlaw does not play on Saturday. There's no chance he doesn't play after he participated in practice twice. No chance he doesn't play.
Yeah, I mean, this is the healthiest, obviously, the 49ers have been going into any playoffs that I could think of, especially maybe since 2019. And even then, I think this team is healthier because, that year we had some big names that were injured throughout that playoff series. But yeah, I think the big thing to me, Rohan, are, the guys, the depth has come back. Right. And for me, if I'm going to look at what unit is the biggest weakness, to me, it's been the special teams, and having those guys come back, those depth pieces come back, bolster up that special team. So I think that everything's pointing in a positive direction for the 49ers with, the offense being totally healthy, defense being totally healthy. And then now you have your special team aces back, and Odom, and and those guys. So field position should be once again a positive thing for the 49ers. So ultimately, everything is pointing in the right direction.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I mean, that's another one that you talked about, George Odom, who I didn't mention. He was a guy I did not expect back, but he practiced in full the last 2 days with that bicep injury. And that's big because what have the 49ers done at safety? They've kind of been rotating with veterans the last few weeks without Odom. Obviously, Odom was injured, I believe, the week after Talanoa Hufanga, so they've been short on safety depth. That is that's a positive going into the playoffs that he is back. As for the
We having some technical difficulties, or you got a message?
I did get a technical difficult. No, we are good. I am tripping. Okay. No, it was a mix of both. A message came on the screen and then the technical difficulty came after that. But we are good now. But what I was mentioning though is the Green Bay Packers, if you look at it, the 49ers are not as injured as the Green Bay Packers, which is interesting because a lot of people were putting concerns about the 49ers coming out of that week 18 game. How is it going to be? Ark Armstead is also back, but then if you look at the Green Bay Packers, players like Jair Alexander are not playing, not playing. They are questionable. So, what do you take away from things like that?
Yeah, a couple of things. I mean, I think not bringing up Ark Armstead is, a huge failure on my part. I think that's one of the biggest returns, right? Because ultimately, when you look at how the Green Bay Packers beat Dallas, it was the strength in their running game. Obviously,
Mhm.
Aaron Jones coming back, he had a big game in Dallas. And the 49ers, if you're going to say maybe one aspect of the defense is hit or miss, um, you would say it's the run defense, even though they are pretty staunch. I don't think they've allowed a 100-yard rusher throughout the whole season, but a huge part of their rush defense is Ark Armstead. Having him there, I think, is going to be huge for the interior. And then obviously, I think that they'll be able to get more pressure onto Jordan Love, which is also going to be a key component in messing up the Green Bay Packers momentum. Now, I think that Jair Alexander injury is going to be huge because to me, Rohan, he is obviously their best corner.
Yeah.
And you would think that, he played a big role, in Dallas, like locking up CD Lamb a little bit. And, CD Lamb didn't have the game that you would have expected. I think a lot of that has to do with, Jair Alexander. He's obviously a leader on that defense. And if he's hobbled, I not only being able to defend the routes on a game. I think it's an ankle, right? Ankle or knee.
Hmm.
Uh, being able to defend the routes, but more importantly, we know that the 49ers biggest attribute with their weapons is yards after the catch. Having not being able to plant correctly, not being able to be as nimble on your ankle or whatnot, that's going to affect his ability to tackle these guys. And if you can't, if you're not disciplined in tackling Debo and tackling IU, Kittle, like these guys are going to be able to go off and have those, turn those 10-yard plays into 30, 40-yard plays. So I think that's going to be a big issue if he's obviously there's going to be some level of injury there. And I expect the 49ers to take full advantage of it.
No, I think that that's a good topic. One thing I want to mention with Ark Armstead as I transition to a different portion of the show is what does Ark Armstead bring that I think is going to be extremely valuable in the playoffs? That is his run defense. Armstead's the team's best run defender. And if you look at the playoffs, kind of the formula for success in the playoffs, it's being balanced, something I wrote about this week. And it's also having a strong run game to complement a good pass game. Even with some of the marquee teams, you've seen some other teams struggle in the AFC and NFC in the past when they haven't been able to run the football well. One that comes to mind in particular is the Buffalo Bills, who really struggled to run the football when there was Devin Singletary leading the charge, not against Singletary. They just didn't use the running backs as much. And so that was kind of a thing. But really, the 49ers, that's something that's going to be important. Stopping Aaron Jones, not running the football as much. I think that that's going to be an integral piece of the formula because if you kind of not eliminate, but slow down Aaron Jones, who had 118 yards and 3 touchdowns last week. If you can slow down his production, you make it harder on Jordan Love to kind of be able to do his job. And again, this is a rookie, not a rookie, but a first year quarterback in a playoff scenario. I personally think Love is extremely talented. When I was ranking playoff quarterbacks, I had Love at 4. Maybe it's a bit of a projection. I have Love as I think the top NFC quarterback on my rankings right now. And that's pretty darn high praise. Again, like I said yesterday, all of my when I'm talking about projections, all of those top quarterbacks are franchise quarterbacks. They're in my top 13. It might be wide one or two spots that each differs and interchangeable, but with a guy with not only Love being experienced, but that entire receiving core kind of having 1 to 2 years of playing experience in the NFL under their belt, zero playoff experience, I think that taking away their most experienced guy on offense, which is Aaron Jones, would be really key into kind of putting more pressure on the Packers, especially when the Packers, I don't know if they're going to have the defense to field what the 49ers do on offense.
Yeah, and ultimately, when you become, one-dimensional with this defense, it's game over, right? Especially when you have to, play from behind. Which Green Bay, if the defense can't hold up, we know that the offense is fully healthy, and CMC is going to be fully healthy. Obviously, Kyle Shanahan having an extra week to plan for a team. We know how dangerous he is off of that. So and scheming up for that, and he's had Matt LaFleur's number in the playoffs and just overall. And now he has, I think, the best team that he's had ever, under the 49ers, and with all the weapons at his fingertips, and a quarterback that I think is the best fit for his system that he's had ever here in San Francisco. So, yeah, I mean, I think that Arik Armstead plays a big role in potentially turning Green Bay into a one-dimensional team, putting the whole game on Jordan Love's shoulders. And I agree with you. I mean, the kid's from Bakersfield, my hometown, so I love him. But that's a lot to ask for a young quarterback, for any quarterback, man, to put the whole team on your shoulders and against a top 5 defense with rushers like Chase Young and Nick Bosa and Javon Hargrave, Arik Armstead, there, and Fred Warner and Greenlaw, so like there's a lot that Jordan Love is, this is going to be a lot quicker game for Jordan Love, in the sense that I don't think he's going to have the ball as much as he had against Dallas. And I also don't think that Dallas's defense, even on paper, maybe looks similar to the 49ers, but they definitely didn't bring it against him. But one thing I think that maybe is less spoken about, but I think that's important, Rohan, is Arik Armstead is part of the group that's been here with the 49ers, that's been part of the but just haven't been able to get over the hump.
Yeah.
Been one of those, we're the best team in the league, but never been able to win the big one. And I think him coming back can really ground. You're hearing a different message from the team. Guys like Fred Warner are really locked in a different way than I think I've seen in the past. And I think that this team is not feeling pressure, Rohan, but I think they understand what they have. And I think that guys like Armstead, guys like Warner, guys like, Kittle, Juszczyk, these guys know that these opportunities aren't going to be forever. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's a different level of focus. The fact that they're this healthy, the fact that they have these weapons, the fact that they're this stacked on both sides of the ball, Rohan, I think they understand that this is a year of destiny. And I think that Arik Armstead coming back is going to add to that focus of that core that can keep maybe some of these younger guys that might not understand the moment, or, might take these moments for granted. I think they're going to keep them focused. And I don't think we'll see any kind of letdown like maybe some other teams like the Eagles and that Dallas, that we've seen in the playoffs. I don't expect that at all from this 49er team.
I think that's a good breakdown, right? If you're talking about letdowns and things like that, which is why I want to transition to a topic that you were alluding to a little bit. But I want to ask, what are your kind of biggest reasons of optimism for the 49ers? You can kind of preface it around this game, but also throughout the entire playoffs. We talked about injury health. What do you think are the reasons why the 49ers should be optimistic with the way things are going in the NFC, with the way things are going with their team, and in the NFL overall?
Yeah, I mean, I think the list is long, right? We were talking about the team of destiny. Obviously, the NFC being down we're going into the season, Rohan, if we were to talk about what teams do we feel like are the biggest threat to the 49ers in the NFC, my team was the Eagles, and I think the other team that people were mentioning was the Cowboys. And both of those teams being eliminated, before the NFC Championship game, or the 49ers even have to play them, is going well. And then going into the playoffs, I think the team that everybody was saying, oh, this team could have the 49ers number, was the Rams, and they got eliminated as well. So you're looking at the teams that are remaining in the NFC, and I don't think any of them really pose a threat to the 49ers. So there's that, right? The route to the Super Bowl, I think, is a lot easier than in previous years. But to me, Rohan, the biggest thing is this is the first time I think this is a complete 49ers team. And what I mean by that is we've always had like I think this team has always been led by the defense in previous years, where they've had a dominant defense, and you were hoping that the offense could, or the defense could hold on long enough for the offense to finally get something going, right? This offense is different. I don't think the defense is as dominant as previous years, but they don't have to be, because this offense can be dominant and is more consistent than any offense under Kyle Shanahan with the 49ers previously before. One thing that I always used to talk about in previous breakdowns was that I was looking for a 49er team that could play 4 good quarters of football consistently, be able to score in every quarter consistently. And in the previous seasons, that wasn't there. Even though the 49ers may be similar as far as their scoring offense, it always came like in the second half, or like with 2 minutes left in the first half, where they were kind of going in the 2-minute huddle. It wasn't like through consistent drives from the opening drive all the way through to the fourth quarter. And this offense has that ability. Brock Purdy, I think, understands this system and plays this system very, very well. The weapons that he has, and CMC, Debo, Ayuk, Kittle, Jennings coming back. Like, I think that there's just a lot of positivity going there. And then even though this defense isn't as dominant, Rohan, and I'll pass it off to you because I know I'm talking a lot, but even to me, the secondary of this defense being healthy and having so many ball hawks, I think is great, because being able to get turnovers, I think is detrimental to any team, right? If you're turning the ball over, that's whoever wins the turnover battle usually is going to win the game. And
Right.
I think having different levels, not only the corners and Ward and Lenore and Thomas that could get interceptions, but Gibson and Jair Brown being able to get interceptions as well, I think we haven't had that in quite some time. So there's just a lot that this team hasn't had that have been maybe weaknesses in the past. And it seems like this is the year where everything is a strength.
I think that that's a good point. I mean, you bring up a lot of stuff. You bring up mainly, though, that this is a complete team with the offense complementing the defense well. This is the best offense that Kyle Shanahan has had with the 49ers in his entire career. And that's saying something, because the 49ers have ranked among the highest offenses in terms of statistics, like yards, points, whatever it might be. They've ranked, they've been up there in a few of these years. But this year, the offense truly feels explosive. You have a quarterback willing to throw the football to every portion of the field. You have a quarterback who's willing to be aggressive. And that was the main thing lacking from years past. You also have ascensions from receivers like Brandon Ayuk. You still have, your four-headed monster with Ayuk, Kittle, Samuel, and McCaffrey. All 4 of those guys are healthy. McCaffrey getting the rest. And then defensively, it's not like you're taking too much of a step back, right? I mean, you still have you have 2 defensive tackle stalwarts in Armstead and then Javon Hargrave. You got Nick Bosa. You got Fred Warner. You got stars at all levels of the field. Trevor Ward is an all-pro, right? He's an all-pro caliber player right now. And so he's back there as well. You've got a lot of talent on this team. I think that's important, because the talent, not only is it coming together at the right time, but they're also remaining healthy at the right time. I think that's big. The second reason of optimism, and I don't want to sound, I'm not trying to sound cocky or whatever, but the NFC is weak. They're weak. The NFC is much weaker than the AFC. Even if you involve the three teams that Sunil mentioned that could have been the biggest threats to the 49ers in Dallas, Philly, and LA, the NFC is weak because if you're talking about title contenders, you're usually pointing to Baltimore, Kansas City, Buffalo. You're pointing to those type of teams, and those are all in the AFC. Oh, I mean, obviously alongside San Francisco and things like that, but the NFC right now, I think the Niners have to be overwhelming favorites to win the conference title. I mean, they're near 10-point favorites against Green Bay. I would imagine, regardless of the team that they play next weekend, they would probably be touchdown favorites. They're probably going to end up at 7-point favorites, which is not usually precedented for a championship game because
I honestly think, Rohan, this is the toughest team that out of the three that are left. I think Green Bay is going to be the toughest opposition, and I don't even expect this game to be close.
I like your point because if I were to pick, heading into the playoffs, who the two teams that I would not, the two teams that not I would not want to play, but the two toughest teams, I think Rams were number one for me, Packers were number two for me, just because of the way the other teams have played. The Cowboys, the 49ers have their number, and you've seen they don't play well in the playoffs right now. I mean, Tampa Bay, their offense, you can consider it suspect. I think they're run really well by Dave Canales. But I think the 49ers have the personnel to break that team down with their run game. And then as a result in their pass game, Detroit's solid, but do you trust Jared Goff against the 49ers with this defense? Do you trust him to lead you to a playoff victory? And then obviously the Eagles have a horrendous defense. That defense just plummeted the last few games of the season.
Mm-hmm.
It was awful, and they're playing with their players, and it was awful. That tells you something. And so, yeah, I think you're right with you talking about this Packers team because the Packers team is the one that is playing with nothing to lose. They're a 7 seed. Absolutely, we're not expected to be here. They were 3-6 at the midway portion of the season, end up 9-8. And they just knocked off the number 2 seed. They're coming into Levi's. They're coming in with a vengeance. They've got a young team, a young, ambitious, talented team. And then defensively, you still have some good players. It's not the players that's mainly the issue. It's usually been, scheme matching up with the personnel. You still got Jair Alexander. You still got Kenny Clark. You still got Rashawn Gary. You still got, a couple of good players. But I think that the NFC being as it is, I think that's a second reason for optimism. And the third, I'll point specifically to this game. The one position Kyle Shanahan loves to exploit when it comes to defenses is that linebacker position. I cannot see Green Bay's linebackers keeping up in coverage with the things that Kyle Shanahan looks to throw. Quay Walker, nice young talent. Isaiah McDuffie, he's questionable, but he's another player who should play if he ends up being active. Those guys, I just don't see them matching up well in coverage against guys that the 49ers will like to throw in their backfield or even, with the way that they do their motions in the slot. Different guys like that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the one thing that Green Bay does well that has given the 49ers issues in the past is the quick underneath type receivers, which I think Green Bay has a plethora of them, right? Green Bay doesn't necessarily have a wide receiver one, but they have a lot of capable receivers. And it kind of, Jordan Love has talked about it, that not having a bona fide wide receiver one gives him the ability to just throw to whomever is open. And I think they have like capable receivers in these young guys. But one thing that the 49ers do really, really well in the secondary is tackle. So I just think that the defensive line is going to be able to take advantage of the rush. And it's good. I don't know if I'm being overconfident, Rohan, but there hasn't been one thread of doubt that the 49ers are making the Super Bowl this for me. And even winning, I think that they match up well with whomever comes out of the AFC. And I feel like the AFC is kind of going to beat themselves up and the 49ers are going to just kind of be there healthy and waiting. But I don't expect any of these games, this game and then the NFC Championship game. I don't expect them to be close, my man. I just think the 49ers just have it this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in the sense that they come out of the NFC, I believe that. Right now, unfortunately, when I made my little ESPN playoff bracket prediction, I do have them losing in the Super Bowl, which has kind of been my prediction for a majority of the year. I do have them losing when they go to the Super Bowl, but I think that matchup will be a very fun one. As for the NFC, I don't see either of the two teams apart from Green Bay beating the 49ers at Levi Stadium. I think that's a crucial portion of it. I don't see them beating them at Levi Stadium.
Yeah. And I mean, even the Super Bowl is what, a couple hour flight in Vegas for this. So it's like kind of like a home.
They're going to crowd it. They're going, that they're going to crowd it. That's what they're going to do.
I was looking at Super Bowl tickets. I was like, yeah, this is too rich for my blood. But the cheapest ticket I saw was like $8,000. I was like, I ain't got it.
That's funny. Suneil, we talk about, optimism. We're pretty confident as it is, but can you tell me some reasons of concern that you kind of have on your mind?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple. I mean, obviously, we're talking. I do believe the 49ers win big, but the one thing that is a level of concern is if for some reason this game is close, right? So there's two things. One, we haven't really seen Brock Purdy or just Kyle Shanahan in general be able to win games if they're they're down in the fourth quarter. Usually if it's tight, that's because Brock Purdy isn't playing well, which could obviously lead to issues. But if it's close, how much faith do we have in Jake Moody to be able to kick a game-winning field goal or make field goals in crunch time? We obviously know that his confidence can be shook. We know that he he's missed some big ones. One that's lost the game for us, but even recently, in the last few games, like, he's been shaky. Luckily, it hasn't affected the team's ability to win. But a close game, I think, Rohan, is where that would be the cause for concern, just because we haven't seen the 49ers really be dominant in those close games where they could just confidently pull it out. So I think that's it. But once again, the chances of that, I think, are very slim until they get to the Super Bowl, just because I think they're overwhelmingly better than the teams in the NFC. But that would be the cause for concern if it gets close and it gets tight, and then it's on Brock Purdy to bring this team back, or Jake Moody is going to be needed for a clutch kick.
I think that those are good points. I mean, the Moody one is especially relevant because it's recent, right? You talk about him missing 2 kicks at the end of the week, at the end of week 18. That's not a good sign going into the playoffs, because it's not unprecedented, but it's an unknown with Jake Moody. You don't know how a rookie kicker performs in the playoffs. If you look at his numbers from this year, it's hard to judge sample sizes for kickers because, again, their volume isn't nearly as high as any other statistic in the NFL. But Moody ranked 20th in overall, field goal percentage this year at 84%. There were 19 other kickers better than him that were qualified, meaning I believe every other kicker on top of him on that list, except for one, Riley Patterson, who spent time between 2 teams and kicked 18 field goals. Every other kicker had more field goals than Jake Moody, more attempts, and were able to convert at a higher rate. So again, the reason that I don't know how much stock I put into it is because kickers, you miss 2-3 kicks, your percentage goes, it plummets just like that because of the low volume. But then again, that is why at the very beginning of the season, I said the one position where the 49ers cannot afford to wait and develop is at kicker. Now, do I think that Jake Moody is an issue? Like, is he a concern for the future? No, I don't think so. I mean, again, you while you don't want to develop him, there is a slight additional layer of leeway, and he's performed well in certain moments. But if you look at the regular season, he did cost the 49ers 2 games. They should have been They should have won that Cleveland game when he had a 40-yard field goal. They should have won week 18 when he costed them with 4 points. And again, it did not matter. The 49ers got the 1 seed and were able to clinch it up prior to week 18 anyway. But these are things that you will have lingering at the back of your mind after Moody missed 2 kicks in week 18. So I think that is one of the concerns that if you were going to come up with a list of concerns, that would probably be one on your list. Again, if that's the level of concern with the way the 49ers score touchdowns, it might not be the biggest concern after all. But you have to point that out. Elsewhere, I think if you're talking about this team, I think the fourth quarter issues, I'm not the biggest guy in putting stock into those just because I think if you look at statistics across the league, you'll see how teams, when they're usually down 8 points in the fourth quarter, don't come back. But you're right in the sense that the 49ers sometimes have struggled to close out close games in key moments. I think the way that the 49ers win is a lot different than the way the 49ers lose. When the 49ers win this year, you see blowouts. You see them winning by multi-digit, double-digit scores. Sometimes you see them winning by a lot. I believe, especially in that second half stretch when you were, winning a ton of games, it wasn't close. However, when they lost, it was almost always a close game. I don't care about week 18 with that 1 point game, but you talk about the 3-game stretch in the middle of the season. Obviously, the Bengals game was a 14-point game, but the Vikings game, you were in it up until the fourth quarter. You were in that game the whole way up until about 7-8 minutes in the fourth quarter. The Browns game, you were in it till the end. And then obviously the other loss was the Baltimore Ravens game, where that one was probably their worst loss of the season, where you have 4 turnovers and you kind of were out of it by the start of the second half and things like that. And so I think that that's a very good point that you bring up, because this year also showed it that they've struggled sometimes to close out these close games.
Yeah, and I think specific to the Green Bay Packers, I think the only way, because I look at teams that have beat the 49ers in the playoffs in the past, and the most recent one that I remember is obviously these Eagles, but I think obviously we didn't have a quarterback, but the Rams game. You look at guys like Cooper Kupp that have had big games against the 49ers in the playoffs, and his ability to play, the slot receiver and win, be that quick kind of short slant and things like that opened up, the deep throws for, OBJ to have a big game, before he got injured and so on. But I think that Green Bay has that same ability with their receivers to have a lot of the quick slants, things like that. So if the 49ers secondary isn't disciplined in their tackling and, allow Jordan Love to get into his zone, we've seen him be able to really dominate against a good defense in Dallas. So that's another concern, I would say. Looks like we lost Rohan, but he should be back. To Fernando, though, your thoughts on Kyle Shanahan not wanting to do fake punts? I don't hate it. To me, I think that sorry, I'm not the host of the show, so I'm just split screen right now. But to me, Kyle Shanahan is just conservative when it comes to special teams, man. He's not a guy you see, he's more than happy for his punt returners to just, fair catch it. He's more than happy for his kick returners to just down it, and get the ball. I don't think that he's back. I'm talking about Fernando's questions, your thoughts on Kyle Shanahan wanting to do fake punts. I think that just Kyle Shanahan isn't one. He wants to minimize risk as much as possible. And I think not doing fake punts is part of that. He feels like he could control the offense and scheme up things and do some trickery on offense when it comes to scheming things, but I don't think he feels like he has as much control in special teams and things like that. And I think he's just a stalwart and minimize mistakes as much as possible. So all of those fake punts and things like that, gimmick plays, I guess you could call them, they're an opportunity for momentum to be taken away as well. So I think he just plays the numbers and tries to keep it safe as much as possible.
Now, we can't go without a show without StreamYard kicking me out, unfortunately, for a camera issue. But we are back, and before I give my real take, I gotta say this, right? Like Kyle Shanahan saying he doesn't want to do fake punts. I think the best way to do a fake punt is to publicly say I'm not going to do a fake punt, and then go ahead and just do a fake punt right in the game.
Exactly.
So
You
I
could be
mean, I
playing
could see
4D
that.
chess, right?
Yeah, but I think also a part of it is just like I'm sure the 49ers right now. They probably believe that they can beat any team straight up. And with the fake punt situation, you're right. I think that what I mean by that is they believe they're good enough of a team to where if they need to punt because they're in their own territory, they trust their defense to get a stop. And I think that, well, what I'm hoping, I don't know exactly what'll happen, but we've seen it at times this year when times call to be aggressive for Kyle Shanahan. When you're near midfield, maybe you're probably in opposing territory, but maybe not close enough to kick a field goal. Go for it. Screw the punts. Go for it. I know you can pin them, but I think that's the best way to get momentum and be aggressive and also keep the other team on their toes, because if they just can't get off the field, you go for it. Again, situations call for it. There are certain situations that 100% call for you to kick a field goal, certain situations that call for you to go for it. But I don't really care about fake punts. The 49ers, if you're talking about Shanahan, this isn't something new. He doesn't do fake punts. The one fake punt that we had this year was the Mitch Wishnowsky one, where he kind of just went commando and just like did it on his own after seeing the hole and a little bit of a bobble. So that's kind of the way that I feel about the fake punt issue.
Yeah, and unfortunately, to Kyle Shanahan's defense, that didn't even work. Right, it ended up being a penalty on Ronnie Bell, and they ended up having to re-kick it. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just part and parcel with Kyle Shanahan's personality and philosophy when it comes to the offense. And he's so exciting on offense with what he schemes. Like, I don't think we need it. Obviously, if the Lions end up being who the 49ers face in the NFC Championship game, we'll probably see a lot of gimmick plays because that's big for the Lions, right? That's what they're known for.
Gimmick play on one team followed by a gimmick play on the other. Maybe that's kind of what we'll see. But I mean, overall, there aren't too many concerns for the 49ers, I think. That's kind of like the overarching theme. Go for it, though. What were you thinking?
No, I had a couple of questions for you. I don't know if you have more questions lined up.
Yeah, go for it. What do you got?
So I wanted to talk to you because I think that there's kind of a two-part question. Obviously, we both feel pretty confident that the 49ers are going to make it all the way to the Super Bowl. You don't feel like the 49ers are going to win it. I do feel like the 49ers can win it, but I do want to kind of put things in perspective. And obviously I know it's a little bit early, but I never know when I'm going to get on another show with you, Rohan. But I want to hear what you think a Super Bowl win does for the 49ers legacy, and then also what it does for Kyle Shanahan's legacy.
I think it cements it. I think the one thing that has evaded this team is a Super Bowl. The Lions, for example, are a completely different situation. The one thing that evaded them for 30 years was a playoff victory. And so even if they lose to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers by 40 points tomorrow, or whenever they play, I think that it's still going to be a successful season in their eyes. However, the 49ers have set a precedent for themselves over the last 5 years. They have made the NFC Championship every single time they've gone to the playoffs. That is the minimal. That is the lowest of the low bars, because that's what the 49ers have done. When you consider this playing field, the expectation should be to win a Super Bowl. But I think the one thing that that people view as a barrier between coaches, between players, whatever it may be, between different different organizations, is the championship ring. We saw certain teams, when you make it, there's a difference. That's how you not start a dynasty, but cement that dynasty is the dynasty. So I think that the 49ers winning a Super Bowl alleviates some of the pressure, because Kyle Shanahan, now I don't think there's much pressure in terms of job security. I think that that's secure. Shanahan, Lynch got multi-year extensions prior to the year, but I think that this adds to their legacy, because that's the one thing, in my opinion, that has evaded Kyle Shanahan into being arguably the best coach in the NFL. That's the main thing. If you talk about it, you're talking about guys like Andy Reid, multiple Super Bowls. You're talking about those type of coaches. If you view Bill Belichick up there, it's because he's won Super Bowls, because he's created a winning culture, but also sustained winning cultures with the Super Bowl. And I think it also 100% cements Brock Purdy as a guy who can do it. I think that's the biggest narrative of the entire thing. A lot of the issues that people have online with Brock Purdy is that they don't believe he can win a Super Bowl. They don't. And so if Brock Purdy ultimately goes out there and shows that you can win a Super Bowl, I think it shows two things. One is something that I wrote in my article yesterday. There is a bit of a change in the narrative specifically this year around playoff teams. In the matchups that we talked about the wild card round, the better quarterback lost in all three of the NFC matchups. Matthew Stafford lost to Goff. Jalen Hurts lost to Baker Mayfield. And then, you can debate it, but Dak Prescott, with the way that he had the season that he lost to Jordan Love. And to me, what it shows is the quarterback is ultimately very important. But one thing that was true that we've seen a couple of times in the past is that elite quarterback play could elevate a less superior team. I think we saw that, when Tom Brady went to the Super Bowl with the Bucs. We've seen that a couple of times, maybe more specifically on the AFC side. But this year, it seems like the better team is the one that's edging out because of the way the NFL might be changing in the playoffs. You need to be more balanced. You need to have this and that. You need to have, a good defense. There are different elements that I think that are elevating teams more than others. And I think even the teams with juggernaut quarterbacks are trying to evolve. You look at Kansas City, they've run the football a little more with Isaiah Pacheco, and more importantly, they've significantly improved the defense from when they initially started that dynasty. I think that that's one of the biggest things that the better teams might ultimately trump. And obviously, if you're talking about roster talent, I think the 49ers are up there. But I think not only does it push that narrative, but it also shows that Brock Purdy, he is that guy that many of us, including myself, believe. He's in that franchise quarterback realm. Everybody that is not, in tune with that puts him there. And I think even a Super Bowl ring pushes Brock Purdy above other guys who may not have won a Super Bowl ring yet.
Yeah. I think, the first part, what it does for the 49ers as a franchise and their legacy, it obviously breaks the tie with some pretty historic franchises, right? Obviously Dallas Cowboys being one, to be able, we've obviously been a better franchise than them, especially over Kyle Shanahan's tenure. But as far as rings, we're still tied with them. So it breaks that tie. I think it breaks the tie with Pittsburgh as well, right? That would be
Pittsburgh, I believe, has 6.
They already have 6. Yeah. So it would tie, I guess it would tie them. And I think the way this team is set up, it could be the start of a dynasty, man. Like the 49, at least a mini dynasty, right? Where I think the 49ers, we already see Trent saying that he's going to come back for next season, which is a big difference from last season where some people were thinking he was talking about retirement after the season, or he's already pumped enough to say he wants to come back next season. So I think that this team understands what they have. And at least this iteration of the team, a lot of these pieces are locked in for the next at least 2 years. So it could be the start of something magical. And I think for Kyle Shanahan, we see how much leeway coaches with one Super Bowl championship get. You look at guys like Sean Payton, Mike Tomlin, Mike McCarthy, like these guys. And I want to put Mike Tomlin in his own category because I actually think he's a really great coach. But guys like Sean Payton and Mike McCarthy, I think, get a pass for huge coaching mistakes because they have that
because they won a Super Bowl. You're
right?
totally right.
And, and so and whereas I think Kyle Shanahan is already
another guy, real quick, I didn't want to interrupt you, but Doug Peterson, he probably gets a second chance because he wins the Super Bowl. But go ahead.
And I already think Kyle Shanahan is better than these coaches that I mentioned. But because he doesn't have that Super Bowl, that's what everybody points to. Like he can't be because those guys have Super Bowls and Kyle Shanahan doesn't. I have always said the comp of Kyle Shanahan is Andy Reid. Andy Reid, before he won a Super Bowl, a lot of the same issues and questions about Kyle Shanahan that people have, they had about Andy Reid. Like, okay, he's great during the regular season. He could get his team to his NFC championship game. But he mismanages late games. He can't win the big one, yada, 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 yada. But once he won that Super Bowl with Patrick Mahomes, obviously all of a sudden he's now considered the greatest coach, right? Right up there with, Bill Belichick. And, he's won another one since then. But I think Kyle Shanahan can have that same momentum where he wins this one, potentially could win another one in the next 3 years with the same team. And then all of a sudden now you're talking about him as, can he end his career because he's so young as the greatest coach of all time? And that narrative, Rohan, to go from somebody who some of the fan base is ready to be like, he's the reason why we can't win a Super Bowl, to will overnight change to possibly can he end his career as the greatest coach of all time, is wild that all of that could change over these next 3 games.
Right, because it's another thing, and I don't know if you tie them directly together, but we talked about close games. Many anticipate Super Bowls and these type of high, marquee games to be close games. It's the how can you win marquee games? That's kind of the big question when it comes to Super Bowls, when it comes to playoffs, when it comes to coaching in the clutch and things like that. And so if Kyle Shanahan goes, he goes over that border, it cements his status as that top coach. Because what's the one other thing that Sean McVay, his own pupil or close friend, has over him? It's a Super Bowl. Sean McVay as well. That was the thing where a lot of people, if you're discussing Shanahan versus McVay, sure, McVay has won, or Shanahan has won a ton of the regular season, but it's McVay who's the guy that's kind of been, winning a lot. And
and some people will look at McVay and say he's a better coach, even though you look at the stats and Kyle Shanahan has had a better team and done better with his time in San Francisco, I would argue, than McVay has with the Rams. But McVay has that elusive championship, so it makes that trumps what Kyle Shanahan has done. Another thing, though, on the flip side, Rohan, the one defense that we've always kind of, us Shanastans like myself, have been able to like kind of defend Kyle Shanahan for not winning is like, give him his quarterback and then let's talk, right? Mm-hmm. And if he doesn't win it this year, Rohan, there's zero excuses. This year, if he's not able to do it, it's like, can he do it? Because he has his quarterback. He has the health. He had all of the excuses that you could have given him in the past for why things didn't go that way. He has the weapons. He has the talent. He has the path. All of these things, like, it could be his greatest coronation and be the trajectory to, hey, this is the next guy. Or it could totally be the opposite and be like, maybe the 49ers made a mistake keeping him, like extending him and all that kind of stuff, right? Because maybe he's just not that guy.
I think that, that's a very interesting debate. I think the take that I had beginning of the year when I was speaking with Ryan Hensley is when it comes to Shanahan, my not window in terms of I don't believe he gets fired anytime soon. But I think my window in terms of cementing him as the top head coach or one of the top 3, whatever you want to put, is 2025 in terms of you get 2 more years. Sorry. 2 more years, because that's the window of his entire contract. More importantly, you talked about him having his quarterback. Brock Purdy's his guy now. That's when Brock Purdy's rookie deal ends. You have to win a Super Bowl within that time span. Obviously, the clock is ticking, and you've made an NFC championship. If you do it again this year, it'll be 4 of the last 5 years. You want more than that, but that is my window. If you cannot achieve it by 2025, when Brock Purdy is on that rookie, his rookie contract is done, you seriously have to question a lot of things with the 49ers organization, because you now will go into a completely different window. Obviously, we don't even know who's going to be on the team by then, but you go into a completely different window once you start having to pay that quarterback from $800,000 to whatever the top quarterback salaries are at that point.
Right. Yeah, so it's going to be a completely different team. So my hopes, the next 2 years, both chips, baby. Back to back Super Bowls for the 49ers.
Let's see if that comes true. You did mention Trent Williams. I think that's where we're going to end the show because he did confirm he wants to come back for 2024. He said the main reason is because he wants that 12th Pro Bowl. Trent Williams obviously has been one of the best left tackles in NFL history. He's been that guy. He has now earned his 11th Pro Bowl this season, and I believe that a lot of them are consecutive. I know he had that 1 year off where he was obviously dealing with some health issues, and obviously that was with the Commanders. But apart from that, he has 11 Pro Bowls. He wants 12 because currently he's tied with 3 other people. He'll break the tackle record if he gets 12, and that. I mean, he's already a Hall of Famer. Let's not kid ourselves, but that would ultimately cement him as a Hall of Famer and one of the, if not the best left tackle of all time.
Yeah, and I think that does huge things when we talk about the draft. Because,
that's where I'm going.
I think that obviously that can change the strategy a lot, where either you can put it off for another year if you don't have the right guy, or you may be able to take a guy that is raw with a lot of upside and be able to sit him and develop him behind Trent Williams, and then be the kind of like the error in waiting for when Trent Williams eventually retires. You have your guy there. So I think that gives a lot of that's huge for the 49ers as far as having some more options there in the draft, and maybe they focus on getting an elite player at a different position, whether it be right tackle, corner, or whatnot. Instead of needing so right now I look at it, left tackle, right tackle, corner are probably like the 3-4 short positions that we would need some young studs at. With him coming back at left tackle, now you just focus on right tackle, corner, which makes, I guess, the draft board a little bit easier and realistic as far as being able to plug those holes.
Yeah, I think when you talk about it, it has major implications for 2024. Because if you did not have Trent Williams, that would be huge. The 49ers would then have to replace 2 tackles in this upcoming draft. 2 tackles. Some of those guys, Kingsley Suamata out of obviously BYU, Cooper Beebe out of Kansas State. Those are some guys in the draft, but it's a huge deal to replace 2 tackles when you have 1 first-round pick. Right now, the 49ers, with Trent Williams fully penciled in, which was their hope all along in 2024 when they looked at this plan a year or 2 ago, is now you're going to look at right tackle. You're going to likely draft a right tackle within the first 2 rounds because you're not going to go into next year with Colton McKivitz. I highly doubt he'll start next year. So if you only have to fill that 1 spot, that saves you a high caliber draft pick to then go around and fill out a different additional need. Perhaps it's at cornerback, perhaps, wherever it might be. You have another draft pick where you can go around and take a need in the second, or, need best player available, whatever you might look at in the second round. And I think that is big. And I think it's also huge because the 49ers still could take 2 tackles, but it provides you a lot more flexibility. This is one of the deepest tackle classes I've seen in a long time. You could go tackle in rounds 1 and 2, get your future guy on the left side to develop after 1 year. You could very, very much go in that regard. But I think that's kind of where I'm kind of seeing it.
We've seen the 49ers have success with that with Aaron Banks, right? Being able to pick him, high as a second round draft pick, have him sit for a year, and then come in and basically replace an all-pro in Tomlinson without batting an eye, right? I think, Laken Tomlinson was something where I remember the fan base when the 49ers allowed him to walk, Rohan, we're just like, I can't believe the front office, how could they do this? Like an all-pro left guard and blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden Aaron Banks stepped in there and nobody's talking about Laken Tomlinson.
And with all, this is one of the moves I'm happy I got right, because I said there's no chance you pay a guard $13 million. Laken Tomlinson is not good. He is not good with the Jets. He is probably one of the more overpaid guards. I don't know whether it's system, whether it's just a lot of injuries on that offensive line, whatever it is, he has not been great.
Well, it's a lot easier to play the position next to the greatest left tackle, potentially the greatest left tackle of all time, right?
Right.
So Yeah, so I think the 49ers ability to develop offensive linemen is a little underrated. I think that a lot of people tend to not give them as much credit as far as being able to develop offensive linemen. But I definitely agree with you, man. I think within the first 2 rounds, they take a tackle, potentially maybe even 2 tackles, like you mentioned. But going back to the original point, Trent Williams coming back, I think, is a huge sigh of relief for the fan base. I'm sure Kyle Shanahan was super excited about that, and the whole team overall is super excited about that. And I think, even though he said he wants that other Pro Bowl, I think they know how special this core is, Rohan. And like I said, they have 2 more years with this core for sure. Let's see if they could go back to back.
I think that it's a possibility. We'll see what happens, obviously, with the offseason. But as for this season, definitely a possibility. We'll see how it goes. I think the 49ers, I mean, they're favorites right now. Like I said, I think they'll be pretty high favorites when it comes to next week. And
They're
that's if they
favorites to
win.
win the Super Bowl, my
That's,
man.
huh?
They're favored to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah. No, I know. But I mean, like high favorites in terms of the point spread. They're probably like being a touchdown favorite in the NFC Championship game is wild. But
Yeah.
that could be the case should the 49ers obviously beat the Green Bay Packers this weekend. We'll see how that goes. But Suneil, I really appreciate your time today. We broke this matchup down, talked a little bit about the future as well in terms of the offseason, what we could expect. Any last thoughts before we head on out?
Nah, man, just it's exciting to be able to have this type of confidence going into the playoff weekend. I'm actually pretty excited about all the games. I
Mhm.
think it's been a pretty amazing playoffs, even though it's been a lot of blowouts, but it's been pretty exciting. All the matchups, and we got 3 more weeks of football, man, and then it's off to the off season. So gotta enjoy these last 3 weeks before they're all said and gone.
Oh, yeah, that's going to be the biggest part. But, guys, I appreciate everybody for tuning in. This was a really fun show. And we got a game tomorrow. We got a game Saturday night. Make sure y'all tune in, obviously. We might have a post game show. We'll see if I go on with somebody or not. But appreciate you guys. And we will see you guys next time.